Hi class, and welcome to this week's lesson, Lesson 6. Can you believe that? We're already on Lesson 6. I can't believe that. I feel like the semester is just flying by. I'm not sure if you feel that way or not. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, man, I just can't wait for the semester to be over. But I sure feel like it's flying by. So I hope you're enjoying the content so far on all fronts, on the life skills, on the writing, on the math. As I mentioned in the very beginning of the semester, this is my first time teaching this class. So I really like it because in the past I usually taught math. I did teach the life skills class a couple, I think like 2 or 3 times. And so I think it's really cool how they I feel like they took like the best of those and put them in this class. I never taught the writing class before, so I'm not sure how much they took from that class and put it in here. But anyways, I'm really enjoying it, but it sure feels like it's going by fast because it feels like there's a lot each week to keep up on and make sure that we're doing every week. So I hope you're enjoying it. Off to another great week though. So let's jump into it. This week on life skills, we are going to be focusing on goal setting. I love this subject and I think it's a great one to follow up last week's topic about time management. I love the topic of time management. I think the reason I love it so much is not because I'm like stellar at doing it, but more because I feel like it's something everybody can improve on. I mean, I feel like so many people are like, I wish I was better at managing time. I think that's just part of life. Trying to get as much in as you can and you get busy. And that's what I think I like it is because like if you don't do time management, then sometimes things can just get away from you or you get really overwhelmed doing it. And so for me personally, what I do each week is I try and write down everything that I need to do in that week. And then I map out my week. And that goes along really well with goal setting. I think goal setting is kind of that next step, not only of things you need to get done, but something you're trying to achieve. So this week you'll hear a lot about what's called a SMART goal. Maybe you've heard about this already. It's kind of a pretty popular thing out there if you've ever done goal setting stuff. So it's not, this is definitely not BYU Idaho, Pathway proprietary idea. This is a pretty common goal or common topic. And what SMART goal means, it's an acronym. So it stands for specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, you hear it both ways, relevant, and time bound. And the reason why I love SMART goals is because they really help drive you to achieve them. I think all too often when we're goal setting, maybe we make it a little too vague. You know, maybe we say something like, this is one I fall guilty a lot of, and I feel like a lot of people probably can relate to this, but if you set a goal that you're going to exercise more, well, okay, what is more, right? That's not really quantifiable. How do you know what more is? Is that, you know, I'm already exercising and I'm gonna do it like 1 more or 2 more days a week, or, you know, am I gonna exercise longer? Like, it's not a very good goal because it's not very specific, right? It's very, very broad, and we do that a lot, right? I'm gonna be better on my budget. I'm gonna be better at reading my scriptures, right? There's a lot of these kind of open-ended goals like that don't really hold you accountable for anything because it's not very specific. So that's why I like the SMART goal, because if you make a specific goal, it makes it really easy to measure, which really then makes it, you're able to see if you can do it. So, you know, if we're going back to the exercise example, right? If I wanted to set a SMART goal for exercise, I might say something like, my goal for exercise this week is I am going to exercise 4 days this week, right? So it's specific. So it's going to be 4 days. I can measure that, right? On my calendar, maybe I put a check mark on the days I exercise. It's definitely achievable. Like, you know, 4 out of 7 days, that's doable. And it's relevant, right? Because if you have a goal to get in better shape, something like that, then it's relevant and it's time bound. I have a week to do it. So as you read through those modules, be thinking of some goals that you can set each week that are specific, some SMART goals. And they can be, you know, they can relate to your coursework. Maybe you want to finish all the pre-gathering stuff by Tuesday nights. Or maybe you want to finish everything by Friday night, so that way you're not having to do any schoolwork on Saturdays. Those are all great goals that relate to school that I would consider to be specific goals. you know, if you're struggling in the math, you know, maybe you set a goal that you're going to work on your math for 10 minutes a day, or I mean, sorry, not 10 minutes a day. You should probably be doing more than 10 minutes a day, but, you know, 10 extra minutes a day. That's what I meant to say, or something like that. Be thinking about that as you go along this week. So that's our life skills, goals. Now on to writing. So we just finished up the module on writing, where we built a basic essay, where you had an introduction, you had a body, and you had a conclusion. Now we're going to be focusing on continuing writing essays, but they're going to be for the next 5 weeks. Now between lesson 10, we're going to be working on informative essays. So when you're writing an informative essay, two of kind of the main things you always want to keep in your mind, and you'll see this as you you read through the stuff this week. You want to think of what's your purpose in writing this essay and what's your audience. An informative essay can take on many forms. Maybe you're trying to teach a group about some hobby or skill that you have, right? You're trying to inform them. You're trying to teach them, and that's where the audience is something that's really important when you're writing these, because if I'm, you know, two different scenarios, right? So I remember when I was in grad school and I was writing my thesis, my advisor kept bringing this up because he said, "Who are you writing for?" Because sometimes my thesis, I think, was a little too broad, right? It wasn't specific enough. And he really honed on, you know, you're writing to a bunch of professionals, so don't be afraid to use, you know, some of the more professional terms or some of the harder concepts, because they're going to understand that stuff. So if you're speaking to a group of professionals about a topic, you know you can really dive into some of the deep details. But if I'm trying to teach, you know, a group of people that don't have any idea about engineering or anything like that, I'm trying to teach them about engineering design, I don't want to dive into those deep things, right? I want to keep it very top level, very basic. So you got to think about your audience, because that's really important. Because if I wrote a very basic essay for a bunch of professionals, they're not going to want to read that. I already know this stuff, right? So be thinking about that. This week we start diving into that. We'll be working on that over the next 5 weeks. But I think it's a really crucial thing. Anytime you write a paper, you think about who's reading this, right? So in this case, you know, it's going to be me reading it. And it might be some classmates reading it, right? So think about who your audience is, and that's really important when writing these. The last thing that we'll be working on this week in the math is talking about order of operations. Now, just before I jump into that, a thought I had is I do feel like this week the math begins to get a little more challenging. Up to now, we've done a lot of addition, subtraction, some multiplication, division by themselves. Now we're starting to get into what we call the order of operations, where those are all kind of intertwined together, okay? We're also going to throw some variables at you this week, and I know a lot of people, this is when people like throw their hands up, oh, this is it. This is when I can't do math, because all of a sudden there's not just numbers, there's a letter in there, usually the letter X, right? Don't get discouraged. Please, if you're struggling, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to help. Like I mentioned, I usually am a math teacher, so I'm much stronger on that and I can help out there. So don't get too discouraged. Besides that, there's a lot of great material out there. A lot of great material on Canvas with tutorial videos on how to do things. You know, don't be afraid to, if you get stuck on something, to do a YouTube search. There's a lot of people out there, you know, maybe sometimes you connect better with the teaching style of somebody else than maybe the tutorial videos, and that's just fine. The beauty of math is that math is math. There's not like, if I learn it from Brother Dixon or for some guy on YouTube or from the professor from Pathway that's doing the video, right? It's all the same. Math has rules and you have to abide by those rules, and it doesn't matter who teaches you, you still got to do those rules. So that's kind of the beauty of math. That's one of the things I like about math, is that it doesn't matter. So, but there is one thing that I do want to teach you, and that is this acronym here. We'll see if I can show you the whole thing. There we go. It's PEMDAS. So when you're doing a problem like this on the bottom, where I've got maybe some multiplication, some addition, subtraction, more multiplication, right? Normally when you read, you just want to go left to right, right? So you want to do this times this, right? But that's not how math works. Math has to follow this rule right here, PEMDAS. You have to do your parentheses first, right? So if I come down here, I got to do what's in the parentheses first, okay? And I combine those. Then I do my exponents. I look at this simple problem. I just made this problem up. There's no exponents in there, so I don't have to worry about that. Then I do my multiplication and division. So I come down here, I look like I'm multiplying by whatever number I get here, and then I'm also multiplying over there. So it's important that I do that before I do the subtraction, because then it's addition and subtraction. Now some people will get mixed up and say, well, addition's down here, so why would I do this addition here? Well, you got to remember, the first step is parentheses. Do what's inside the parentheses first. Okay, so you go to the parentheses, and then within there you have to do that. So feel free to pause the video, maybe write this down, PEMDAS. I remember learning it in high school. It's stuck with me ever since. I feel like no matter how much I do math, anytime I come to a problem like that, I literally say PEMDAS in my head. I'm like, oh, PEMDAS, okay, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Now technically, the multiplication and division, you know, you could do the division first, then the multiplication, that's fine. And same thing on the addition and subtraction. You could do the subtraction first and then the addition. But it just, I mean, it makes it into a nice acronym. That's why I have it written out that way. But that's really, that's what I've got for you. I know this video is a little lengthy. But please don't hesitate to reach out to me with questions or concerns on any of the subjects. And yeah, I hope you guys all have a great week and look forward to hearing from you. Bye.